Welcome back to another video, and I have another location for you guys where buyers agents are currently buying in, and there are opportunities for under $500,000 in this area. And the location I'm talking to you about is Tamworth. And if you're new to this channel, I talk about all different suburbs throughout Australia, and I don't gatekeep these suburbs like other buyers agents and other property gurus do. I just tell you them straight and do deep dive analysis into these videos. And so in this video, we're going to go through Tamworth, its pros and cons, which suburbs to consider for investment, and its economic diversity, and more. So make sure you watch through till the end of the video to fully understand what you are buying and where you are buying. Because if you only watch this video halfway, then you're not going to get the full picture and the full understanding. And so when we look at Tamworth region, it's about $640,000 median buy price, but there are suburbs under 500, around $550,000 with much better yields as well. And when we look at the location, it's about a 70,000 odd population. So it's not some small regional town. It is a fairly large regional location located in New South Wales and much to the very similar size as nearby Dubbo. But these regions are different, and I want to break it down for you. And when we start to look at Tamworth, we can see that there are a couple of suburbs already in this market around the $550,000, but there are some warnings that I need to tell you about if you are planning to invest here or if your buyer's agent is telling you to buy here. And when we start to look at some of these locations and I start to scroll across, the number one issue that I find with a lot of suburbs in Tamworth is when we look at the renter to owner occupier ratio, you can see that some of these suburbs are exceeding 40%, closer to the 50% mark. Some of these locations like West Tamworth, South Tamworth, Oxley Vale and North Tamworth are close to the 50% mark, meaning that there are 50% investors in that area. Now, if you don't understand what that means, is that when there is 50% investors, that means there's more rental property, there's more competition when it comes to selling. And if there's a high investor ratio, that means there's a low owner occupier ratio, which means people don't want to really live in these suburbs. And that has a number of fundamental issues from a long-term hold standpoint. However, there is still value in this suburb for considering as an investment purpose. Now, the other thing I also want to straight away point out amongst this location is when you start to scroll across and looking at the data and you look at the vacancy rate, you can see a lot of these suburbs with those higher RO ratios also have a higher vacancy rate, close to the 2% mark. Places like South Tamworth, like Oxley Vale, like West Tamworth, all have a higher vacancy rate because, like I said, there's just more investors in the area, meaning more rental properties, etc. So that's one consideration you're going to have to take off straight off the bat when you look at these locations. But from an investment standpoint, when you look at the data, what are the suburbs that buyers agents and other investors are eyeing up at this point in time? And I'm going to tell you. And just before I go any further, if you are confused, unsure about where you want to invest next, make sure you jump into the private community. We are at almost 300 members. There are over 280 people in the community helping each other out, helping each other find the next best location to invest into. And at 300 members, we will be increasing the price point. So make sure you secure your spot today because it is not going to last at this point. And by the way, don't take my word for it. I have over 46 reviews which you can read about the community, about my private mentorship and help. So I don't want to sit here and convince you about whether you should join the community or not. Just look at the people who have been part of the community, who have had great value instilled into them. So make sure you jump in. And by the way, I looked at KFC in Tamworth and it costs about $40 to feed your family. And the private community with private mentorship, access to private resources, letter templates, property portfolio sheets is only $35 a month. So invest in your family instead of the KFC bucket and you'll get a much better return on investment. You don't need to spend 10 grand on a property course. You don't need to spend 15 grand on a buyer's agent. You just need to spend a little bit of money so you can be ahead of 90% of the people out there. So make sure you jump into the private community. I know you won't regret it. Let's get back into the video. When you look at West Tamworth, you can see the buy price is around $450,000 with a 4.5% yield. So a pretty decent yield in New South Wales, nothing great, but you can achieve 5% if you buy accurately. And you can see West Tamworth did have a lot of growth during that COVID period and had very sustained growth over a long period of time. So it is a reliable performer. But in recent years, it has gone through a bit of a downtrend and now it's flattening out and we are possibly entering a second wind. And so this is one to watch. And if I start to look at the data a little bit more in detail, you can see that rents haven't risen over the past year. And this is because of that higher rented to owner occupier ratio of 51%. And this is because of that higher rented to owner occupier ratio. It just means there's more competition. It's harder to increase rents. And this is something that's most likely going to happen into the future as well. So it is something that you have to consider if you are choosing to invest into a location like West Tamworth. But there are some very good positives. When you look at the affordability, it is under 35 years, closer towards that 30-year mark, which means it's still affordable for the residents that choose to live in this location, which is a tick of approval when we look at a location to invest. Other than that, stock is depleting in recent months, as well as demand is also increasing, both ticks of approval when we want to choose a location to invest into. Vacancy rate, as I mentioned earlier, is sitting around 2%, which isn't great. But keep in mind, West Tamworth is a location that you want to be considering. Likewise, we have nearby South Tamworth with a very similar price point and a very similar outline. But in this location, we're already starting to see positive price movement with the past quarter growth at 0.65%. So we are starting to see the first early signs of the markets moving, which is important for us because we want a good indication. We don't want to be too early into a market, but we don't want to be too late. So it's something to actually look into. And unlike West Tamworth, you can see South Tamworth has had the rents increase. Now, this still has a higher RO ratio, so there's always a risk that rents may stagnate longer or may not increase as much. But if you're starting to compare like for like, I'm more interested in South Tamworth over West Tamworth because it has a slightly lower RO ratio and rents have been rising. At the same token, affordability is sitting closer towards that 35-year mark. And once again, the vacancy rate is quite high. Now, of course, this is just one data source. You can also cross-reference SQM Research and DSR if you choose to as well. But South Tamworth is another location if you are looking closer to that sub 500 to that 500k price point, is one that you want to be on your watch list. Where else can you look? You can also look at Oxley Vale. Now, Oxley Vale is another more nicer suburb in Tamworth that people are considering to choosing to invest into. Its prices have been rising with around 7% growth over the past year. So this market has already started to lift off, but the median rents once again aren't that high, haven't been rising, only 1%. A slightly nicer suburb with the 43% RO ratio, so slightly more owner occupiers, but it's still that just little bit high for my liking, but everyone has their own risk appetite, and so you can make your own decision from there. Another location I also want to bring your attention to is Hillview. Or Hillview, I'm going to butcher the name. But this is a slightly higher median price point, around that 660,000 mark. And there's other locations in New South Wales that you can consider, but prices have been rising as well with around 10% over the past year. But a much more better area to choose from an owner-occupier standpoint, much better ERSAT score, so better socioeconomics, and less investors and less renters. Obviously, that comes off with the trade-off of the higher buy-in price point. But affordability is still very good, under 35 years. So this is about markets within markets, solid fundamentals. This is one that would be on my watch list. Now, of course, you're going to see a big red flag here with the vacancy rate. However, this is the case where I'd start to do more deeper due diligence, talk with property managers about the area, how hard it's to find the tenant, and if this is an accurate representation of what's happening on the ground. But these are just some suburbs for you to consider in Tamworth. So if that's all you're here for, now you know what suburbs that BAs are buying in, where they're looking to purchase their next property for the next 12 to 24 months of growth. However, if you want to know more about Tamworth, then you need to watch through till the end of the video so you fully understand what is going on. Because you do not want to be investing blindly with a location with bad fundamentals. Now, it's all well and good to think about the short term of investing into Tamworth, but what about the long term? What about its economic diversity? Now, one thing I did show you from the start is that Tamworth has been a very stable location to invest into over the long term. When you look at the region, it has been an extremely consistent performer over the past 10 years, over the past 5 years, over the past 3 years. It has never gone through a major cyclical change like a mining town, for example. And the reason for this, it has a very good economy. It's about $11 billion in output with about $5 billion in GRP and 28,000 jobs. It has a very similar economic output and GRP in comparison to Dubbo. They're very similar. And when you start to look at this a little bit deeper, you can see it's a very economically diverse regional location with about healthcare, retail trade, education, training, no sector taking up more than 25% of this location. And when you go one level even more deeper and you look at the output, you can see it's mainly manufacturing, construction as the drivers and the output of this regional location. If you go to Tamworth's region website and you start to look at their economic snapshot, it gives you a very good picture about this location in terms of its population, number of businesses, industry outputs, as you can see here, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, agriculture, and forestry. It is very solid. So I have no issues from that perspective of investing into Tamworth. It is a good long-term hold, and now the short-term data is also looking good from that aspect. But are all pockets in Tamworth a good place to invest into? No, this is where you have to be very specific about where you choose to invest and what areas you are looking at. And you have to do your further due diligence to talk to a property manager about. But to help you speed up that process, if you look at this website here, you can actually see that there are a couple of pockets within Tamworth that you want to stay away from. That is in West Tamworth, mainly across these streets over here, where you can see that the public housing is a little bit more, around 60% public housing, alongside Green Street, Worrell Road, as well as Corsa Street as well. So these pockets is what you want to be avoiding. And as I was showing you in H-Tag, a lot of these locations in the west side of Tamworth have a lot of investors. So there's less owner occupiers, while as in South Tamworth and in Hillview, you can find this bottom part and this top part of Tamworth having more owner occupiers. So these are the locations that I would sort of want to invest into over West Tamworth. However, West Tamworth does have those cheaper properties around $500,000. So then you have to decide which trade-offs are you willing to make to buy a property in this region for a set amount of money. And just to show you as well, you can find a property like this for around $450,000, sold on the 16th of June of 2025. Nothing's amazing about this property, but not terrible by any means. It's a very standard sort of old house, sold for $450K. And when you really break down the numbers of around $450,000 at a 12% deposit, you're around $80,000 in cash or equity required, plus a $10,000 LMI. And roughly you're going to get about around $450 to $500 in rent for a property like this, because it's a standard 4x1. You can see most 4x2s are going for a $595, and then a 3x1 is going for about $430. So I've just estimated or guesstimated it's around $500. You can even be a bit more conservative and put $480, and you're getting roughly around a 5.5% yield in this area. So you're negative by minus $9K before any tax refund, and that is not a bad amount of money compared to other locations where people are currently investing into. And if you put a 20% deposit, for example, that boosts your cash flow position as well a little bit more, but obviously you need more cash up front. So each to their own, but this is an example of where you can sort of find properties around that $500,000 price point. Oh, and just before I forget, I have one more thing that I want to show you, is that when you start to look at Tamworth, you also do need to be a little bit careful of where exactly you buy, because there is flood zones across the middle of Tamworth alongside its river. So make sure you are doing a proper due diligence about the property that you're buying to make sure it's not in that flood zone. Double check your insurance premiums. And also when you look at the bushfire, you can see parts of Tamworth are covered in it, especially around those edges. So make sure you're doing your due diligence around that as well. And that really covers another location that you could possibly choose to invest into. And like I said, I'm not like a buyer's agent. I have nothing to hide. I'm always going to tell you about the best locations to consider for investment. That is why I started my YouTube channel. That is why I continue to do this, to make sure that property is no longer gatekept. And if you do need that little bit of extra guidance, you need that little bit of help, jump into the private community, because there is so much value jam-packed into this community and its resources and the templates and the links and the knowledge and the history. It is a no-brainer for you guys to join for $35 a month, right? And you can try it out for 1 month and then you can leave if you want to. I mean, there's discussions every single day to be had. There's motivations and rants. There's also people who have succeeded in buying property and they've shared their story about how they've made a lot of money. We have discussions about rentals and tenancy to make sure you get the right tenant in there. We have mortgage brokers in the community to actually help you with your investment journey, making sure you get the right financing, for example. And we have literally talk about almost every single location throughout Australia. There is so much history. Just by joining it, you will gain instant value. So make sure you jump in. I want to help you out, and you don't need an expensive buyer's agent or expensive mentor. Just join the community. It's $35 a month, but it's only for a limited time till we get to 300 members, and then the prices will increase. So till next time, thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next video.